What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We are going to give you the best and worst case scenario for Oklahoma this upcoming 2021 college football season. Oklahoma didn't get to their best case scenario last year. This is a team that finished the season off looking like a playoff team. Now, let's just be honest. This is a team that was probably one of the best four teams at the end of the season, but because of a couple of losses that they really shouldn't have even suffered during this regular season, because of those two losses, they weren't in contention for a playoff spot. So yeah, you can definitely say that was not the best case scenario. But we're going to look at what the best case scenario for Oklahoma is this upcoming season, and the things that will have to go their way for them to get to that best case scenario. So let's start here with the wide receivers. The wide receivers need to step up. If the wide receivers step up, that is going to be really, really big for Oklahoma, and I think it takes that offense just to another level. Now, they were fine offensively last year. There was nothing wrong with their offense, but you look at the wide receiver position, and it just seemed like something was missing. Marvin Mims was great, but other than him, it just seemed to be lacking a little bit. Now Charleston Rambo is gone, so you're going to need some of these guys to step up and help him out. Jaden Hasselwood, I think, is a guy that can be a star. I mean, he's a big-time talent. If he can take that next step for them at that wide receiver spot, that's going to be big. Of course, Trajan Bridges, he's probably not going to be back. So you're going to be looking for playmakers around Marvin Mims. But if those wide receivers step up, some of the younger guys step up, then Oklahoma is going to be in really good shape offensively. And staying on the offensive side of the ball, they got to find a center. So who is going to wind up starting for them at center? Creed Humphrey, a big-time loss there. You look at the rest of the offensive line for Oklahoma, and I think they're in great shape. I don't really see any holes at the tackle or guard spots, but really it's that center position. Who is going to step in there and take over that leadership role? We all know the center very important on the offensive line, so if they get someone to step up there, then again, they will be in great shape offensively. Those are probably the two biggest question marks for them on that side of the ball. The secondary improves. So if the secondary improves from where they were last year, that was probably the one area of the defense that wasn't great. But again, the defense was much better last season. They're going to lose Trey Norwood and Trey Brown. Those are two big losses at cornerback. So it's going to be up to some of these other guys to step up. Look for DJ Graham to maybe step up and help them out. Jaden Davis, he might be their best corner coming back. The safety position is solid. I mean, I don't think the cornerbacks or in the secondary in general is going to be bad for Oklahoma. But for them to reach their best case scenario, if they're going to have a chance to maybe win a national championship, they're going to have to be a little bit better in the secondary. I think they're going to have to be good enough, to slow down some of these top passing attacks. If they can do that, again, that's going to help them tremendously get to that best case scenario. And then the big one here, Spencer Rattler stays healthy. If he can stay healthy, then Oklahoma is going to be in good shape. That's probably the biggest key for them. I know they got the freshman coming in and Caleb Williams, but to ask a true freshman to step in and lead a team to a college football playoff, that is a big ask. I think you really want to keep Spencer Rattler in there, keep him healthy. We saw flashes last year of greatness from Spencer Rattler. Started the season a little bit slow, but I thought he really turned the corner in that Texas game, in that overtime. It seemed like it just clicked for him, and from that point forward, he looked really good. And I think that him staying healthy is going to be key. If he goes down with an injury, I don't know that Oklahoma can get to the college football playoff or win a national championship. I think they're going to have him stay healthy, and that is going to be really the best case scenario for them this upcoming season. So what does that mean on the schedule? You take a look, they were 9-2 last year. This is a schedule. A tricky Tulane game to start off the season. Also Nebraska in the non-conference. But if they reach their best case scenario, if everything's clicking for them, the things we talked about, all of that works out, then they're going to win 10 of these games without a problem. Tulane, Western Carolina, Nebraska, West Virginia, Kansas State, TCU, Kansas, Texas Tech, Baylor, Oklahoma State. They're not going to lose. If everything is going the way it should for Oklahoma, they're not going to lose to any of those teams. I just don't see it happening. So that leaves Texas and Iowa State. Iowa State's the toughest team on the schedule, I think. Texas is, of course, a rivalry. You never know what you're going to get in that game. But, again, if they are playing at their best and we get the best case scenario for Oklahoma, They absolutely can win those 2 games. They probably should win those 2 games. And I think best case for Oklahoma is going to be 12-0. And I think it's a team that has a shot to maybe win it all this year. So if we're going beyond the regular season, I think the best case scenario for Oklahoma is not just to make the college football playoff, not just to win a playoff game. I think their best case scenario is to win a national championship in 2021. I don't think many Sooner fans expected Oklahoma to lose 2 games last season. It was really probably their worst case scenario. Worst case scenario for them last year was not making it to the college football playoff. Let's take a look at what the worst case scenario would be for 2021. We'll look at the things that would cause them to get to that worst case scenario and then what that would look like on the schedule. So first of all, the pass defense struggles. If they can't stop the pass, they're going to be in trouble. They're going to be facing some really good quarterbacks this year, some good passing attacks. You always do in the Big 12. So if that pass defense struggles, that's not going to be good for Oklahoma. I know their defensive line is going to be really, really good, one of the best in the country, but you can't just count on that defensive line. Yes, they help everything out. They stop the run, they get pressure on the quarterback, but you can't just count on the defensive line. They need that pass defense, the secondary, to step up. If they do not, then that's going to really hurt Oklahoma, and it might cost them a game or 2 this season. Also, they lose their focus. That would be the worst case scenario, and we've seen it now several times from Oklahoma where they'll win a big game, but then they lose to a team that they have no business losing to. Just go back to last year. That's going to be really the worst thing that could happen to Oklahoma is they lose their focus this season. They go into a game where they have some turnovers, some stupid penalties, and it costs them a game. You just don't want to lose your focus, obviously. And even going beyond the regular season, let's say they go 12-0, and they're thinking, all right, we're going to the college football playoff. You don't want to lose your focus there and potentially lose, say, to an Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game, thinking you've already got a spot in the playoff, and then somehow that spot gets taken from you. So, that's always such a big deal in college football. The psychological factor, I think, does not get looked at enough. It is a big deal. And Oklahoma, they need to stay focused all year long, every single game. If they don't, then again, that could cost them. How about Marvin Mims getting no help at wide receiver? That's going to also be really a worst case scenario for them. I think we know what we're going to get from him. He's going to be their go-to guy. He's going to be one of the top receivers probably in the country. Is he going to get some help? Is Jaden Hasselwood going to step up? With Theo Weiss, Drake Stoops, one of the young guys. He's going to need some help because they're not going to be able to just go to Marvin Mims all the time. And I feel like the wide receiver position is they have a lot of talent at wide receiver at Oklahoma, but I just feel like they haven't really lived up to their potential as of late. And if they can't live up to that potential again this year, and they're putting everything on Marvin Mims, it's going to really take away from what this offense could be. So that would be, again, a worst case scenario. Also, injuries. It's really, the case for every single team, and it was kind of hard to come up with these things for Oklahoma. I really think it's going to be a great year for the Sooners, but injuries could play a big factor. Spencer Rattler going down would be devastating for them. Marvin Mims going down would be devastating, losing your go-to receiver. They're pretty set. They're deep at running back. I think the offensive line's pretty deep as well. Defensive line's pretty deep, but what if you lose some guys in the secondary? You go back to last year, not necessarily just injuries, but also guys that were suspended. You saw a different team when those guys came back. So you want this team to be at full strength. You want them to be healthy. And at least for the most part, you're going to have some injuries. But if they have a lot of injuries or multiple injuries to one position group, that is obviously going to be the worst case scenario for Oklahoma. So what does this mean on the schedule? So we're talking about if they do have that worst case scenario and they've got injuries piling up, the receivers don't step up around Marvin Mims, they just can't stop the pass, all of these things, everything goes against them. Let's see what the worst case scenario would be. Even if that happened, I still think you win 8 games without any problem. I think they're just too good to lose. Upsets happen, of course, but they're too good to lose to Tulane, even Nebraska, West Virginia, TCU, Kansas, Texas Tech, Baylor. That Kansas State game is a little bit tricky on the road right before Texas, and Kansas State seems to always play Oklahoma tough. So that one would worry me a little bit if I'm an Oklahoma fan. Also, Oklahoma State, Bedlam at the end of the season. Again, we're talking about worst case scenario here if everything is not going well for Oklahoma. So if they do have that worst case scenario, I still think out of these 4 games, they're good enough to split the 4 games. So I don't know which ones, it doesn't really matter here, but if you split those 4 games, it's still a 10-2 season for Oklahoma. So to me, that's the worst case scenario, just like last year, losing 2 regular season games being enough to keep you out of the college football playoff. Even if they were to win the Big 12 championship, I don't really see them getting into the playoff with 2 losses unless they get a lot of help. So once again, the worst case scenario for Oklahoma would be 2 losses and missing out on the college football playoff in 2021.